Sorry that took me so long to find the book. I was in this review program for I don't know, a couple of years or whatever. And that's actually why I started doing this stream, because when I was in the review program, I had to do something with all these free products I was getting. So I started taking models and starting building them on the stream. But I since got out of the review program because it was too much. It was like clogging my house with all this crap. So because of that, I wasn't able to find this book. See, it's almost open, but I haven't opened it yet, even though it's probably been in my house for 5 years. I got it. Maybe I'll do it next after I finish Jurassic Park. I think I mentioned I'm reading Jurassic Park right now. So anyway, it's called Pawns in the Game. William Guy Carr, who's some retired Navy or something like that. We could read the whole back of this book and see what it says. But I think what it basically says is that American taxpayers are getting ripped off. Let me see if we can actually read this. I haven't read this book myself yet. I want to, though. Pawns in the Game. And it's an old book. It's from before I was born. So, people used to know this stuff. This guy died, 20 years before I was born. So, no, not 20 years, 14 years. Anyway, the point is, the book is even older if the guy died 14 years before I was born. So, it means that, 60 years ago, people knew what was going on in government. For example, the Federal Reserve is a big thing that people talk about these days, and they're always talking to the chairman and asking him what the interest rates are going to be. The Federal Reserve's only been around for 112 years or something like that, and I think they only had a 100-year contract or something like that. I remember hearing something like that. So anyway, this guy wrote this closer to the founding of the Federal Reserve than now. And it was as I understand, it was not only the flaws in the system, but who were the pawns in the game. So the people you think are your representatives are really pawns. Now, does the system still work like this now? I mean, the guy died, 66 years ago? It probably works different now, but you probably still can get something out of reading it. I'm still going to read it. All right, so let's see about this William Guy Carr. Actually, I'm scanning the first sentence of each paragraph, and I'm not seeing an explanation of the book. I'm just seeing Carr's bio. So it seems we are going to have to open this book. So how do I know what it's about if I haven't opened it yet? I don't know. Somebody must have told me. Anyway, let's read a little about his bio. At the early age of 12, the author was thoroughly indoctrinated into the Bolshevik ideology by two revolutionary missionaries who traveled on the same ship with him out to the Orient in 1907. Oh, 1907, so it's before the Fed was even chartered. Unlike many others, he didn't swallow the bait they offered him, hook, line, and sinker. That was an old expression, a fish swallows there's the line, the hook, and the sinker. If he swallowed them all, it was a really stupid fish. He decided to keep an open mind and to investigate matters thoroughly before reaching any conclusions. Good idea. His investigations and studies of all angles of the international conspiracy have taken him to nearly every country in the world. Commander Carr, you know what? Let's just rip this plastic off right now because it's causing these reflections. I can't even read this book with it on. So I guess it's official. As soon as I finish Jurassic Park, I'm going to start reading this book, despite the fact that it's went untouched for 5 years, maybe 10 years, however long. It was a 2 feet from where I sleep for the last decade, and I never opened it up. Because once I open it, I either have to read it or I'm going to, same with a video game. It's once I open it, I have to either read it or sell it, or because I don't want it sitting around open, because then I'll think that I read it when I haven't. So I had this like unopened for a decade or whatever. I can look on Amazon exactly when I bought it. I'll do that in a second if you want to take guesses. All right. He decided to keep an open mind and investigate matters thoroughly before reaching any conclusions. His investigations and studies of all angles of the international conspiracy have taken him to nearly every country in the world. So if you'll notice, the back of the book, it's called About the Author, but it's basically marketing. Anything on the jacket, whether it's the binder, the cover, the back, it's all marketing or it's sales, ISBN number. You know, it's there to make you buy the book. So, conspiracy. This was not a bad word back then. People say it was 1963 after Kennedy died that conspiracy became like a word you're not supposed to say. First printing 1954. First printing 1954. So this guy died within 5 years of this book being printed. Make of that what you will. So he was 66 years old when he died, and this book is from 66 years ago. Or was he 64? Yeah, he was 64. Oh, is this book? When was this book published? 54? So 70 years ago. Right. So 70 years ago, saying conspiracy was marketing. Nowadays, it's like poison. But I don't understand why, because if there's no such a thing as a conspiracy, then there should be no courtroom cases ever. Because a conspiracy just means like two people lied. That's all it means. It doesn't mean anything crazy. It's like the Menendez brothers, for example. I don't know, that's like big in the news lately. These two brothers, they like killed their parents, and they went to jail for it. And the question was, did they kill them in self-defense or to steal their inheritance or whatever? But the point is, the two brothers spoke together, came up with a plan, executed that plan, which was executing their parents. And so that was a conspiracy. Two people spoke in secret of a crime. It was a conspiracy. So if this guy, I don't know if he was JAG or not, but even if he was just interested in legal or financial matters, anytime something smells fishy and it involves more than one person, that's a conspiracy. That's just what it means. That's just like the definition of the word. Anyway, Commander Carr had a distinguished naval career. Oh, was he Oni? Now I want to know. During World War I, he served as navigating officer of HM submarine. In World War II, he was naval control officer for the St. Lawrence, then staff officer operations at Shelbourne NS, then senior naval officer at Goose Bay, Labrador. As an officer on the staff of Commodore Reginald Brock, he organized the 7th Victory Loan for the 22 Royal Canadian Naval Training Divisions. Did I miss something? Was this guy Canadian? Because if so, then this stuff doesn't even relate to America. Not that I said it did, not that I ever claimed it did, but I was doing all that talk about the Federal Reserve, and now I'm seeing that this guy is Canadian, and apparently then nothing I said was accurate. All right, well, there must be something to this book. I mean, if I bought it, I must have had some reason. As an author, he previously published the 7 books listed above. Some were specially bound for inclusion in the Royal Library, the Library of the Imperial War Museum, and the Sir Millington Drake Library, which is bequeathed to Eton College, and the Braille Library for the Blind. Several of his books have been published in European languages. Commander Carr is known to many Canadians who have attended his public lectures. he toured Canada for the Canadian clubs in 1930 to 31. He warned people of the existence of an international conspiracy. He foretold that the conspirators would, unless checked, drag the world in another global war. In the years between 1931 and 1939, he addressed social and service clubs all over Ontario. In 1944 and 1945, he was sent on another lecture tour of Canada by the naval authorities. He explained why it would be necessary to win the peace if the fruits of military victory were not to be thrown away again. Wow, so he was making these speeches like with approval of, he was in the Navy and he was getting paid and the government was sending him to make speeches. That doesn't sound like the conspiracies we're normally talking about, but he is saying it's international. So maybe he's just thinking, it's like nowadays you would say like Canada first or America first or whatever country you're in first. It's like maybe it was like Brexit. Brexit probably the best example, right? It's like, what do we need to be in this, like what do we care what Belgium thinks? Like, let's just do our thing, kind of like, I'm guessing. I know we're not talking about that Barbara list anymore. We kind of went in another direction. Maybe I'll update the title tomorrow or whenever. But that Barbara list, it wasn't going anywhere, so we're doing this now. Commander Carr was determined to inform as many people as possible regarding the evil forces which adversely affect all our lives and the lives of our children. His book will be an eye-opener to parents, clergymen, teachers, students, statesmen, politicians, and labor leaders. So this guy was going on like official government lectures, and he's saying this book should go to like schools and clergy. So obviously things were not considered. Conspiracy did not have the same meaning it does now. But just look at this cover. This does look like a conspiracy. I'll tell you why. You have soldiers. You have clergy. You have monarchs. I don't know if one of these guys represents a banker. This guy's obviously a communist. That looks like another, maybe cardinal. Well, we've definitely got monarch, military, clergy, and communist. Now, are these good guys and bad guys? The communists seem to be in black, and the clergy and the soldiers seem to be in white. Are they different pieces? Like, because that's how chess works, right? It's like black versus white. But the board looks like checkers because it's got like pink and gray tiles. I don't know, maybe those are muted lights and we're supposed to read them as black and white, but a checkerboard is black and red. This looks like what a checkerboard would probably look in low light or a certain type of light. Pawns in the game. That's the part, just that title. I think that's maybe what drew me in. Pawns in the game. Pawns. Like, who's moving the pawns? That's it. Like, when someone's worried that there's like a puppet regime or something like that, like that's what they're worried about. Like, they voted for this person, but someone else is calling the shots. I mean, that's like a classic sort of conspiracy. Or even just not even a conspiracy, even just someone will say like, oh, that person's a puppet for the pharma industry, or that person's a puppet for the military industrial complex. It's like, a pawn. Maybe back then, 70 years ago, they said pawn. Nowadays, they say puppet because someone's moving the pawns Pawns are not high value pieces. All right, let's see what this book has to say. All right. That's good. Before we even get, it's like kind of more sales. It's like before we even get to the copyright info and whatnot, we've got some description of the book here. So let's see what it says. Pawns in the Game. Here's a true story of international intrigue, romances, corruption, graft, and political assassinations, the like of which has never been written before. It is the story of how different groups of atheistic, materialistic men have played in an international chess tournament to decide which group would win ultimate control of the wealth, natural resources, and manpower of the entire world. It is explained how the game has reached the final stage. The international communists and international capitalists, both of whom have totalitarian ambitions, have temporarily joined hands to liquidate Christianity. The cover design shows that all moves made by the international conspirators are directed by Satan, and while the situation is decidedly serious, it is definitely not hopeless. The solution is to end the game the international conspirators have been playing right now before one or another totalitarian-minded group impose their ideas on the rest of mankind. The story is sensational and shocking, but it is educational because it is the truth. The author offers practical solutions to many problems so many people consider insoluble. You might have heard in the background there was a crash. So I think someone just like broke a glass or something. But I'm going to go check on it. So apologies, I'm again stepping away. But hopefully this one will be quick. And I do want to talk about what we just read there. There was some interesting stuff. Everything okay? Yeah, so just a broken dish. So it happens sometimes. Yeah, scary stuff in here, right? They're saying they're trying to liquidate Christianity. And they're saying it's the communists. So that's how you would read this. I don't know if this king is meant to show a monarch or if it's just that there are kings in chess. Definitely the communists are fighting the Christians. So, that's how I guess William Carr saw it. And I guess it's laid out in this book. But like it really rings true. Like, grift and corruption and graft. And I don't know about the romance. Hopefully political, assassinations are not like a thing anymore. But the atheistic, materialistic, yeah, that's definitely it. That's what I felt. I know there's some people who are atheists. I think there's like a famous guy, Penn Jillette. He's like an atheist, but I don't know, it seems kind of like harmless. He's just like, there's some atheists. I'm not the best person. I'm not prepared to describe this right now. But they're just kind of like, well, I don't believe in any of these books, so I'm an atheist. But then there are other atheists that are like this, as it says here, atheist-materialistic. Like they 100% believe like that they can map out like everything that ever happened in the universe and it's all in the material realm and like the Big Bang makes perfect sense to them and black holes make perfect sense to them and they just like, Einstein-Rosen bridge and, wormholes and they just think it all makes perfect sense. I don't know if they've really thought it through and decided it makes perfect sense, or if they just are antagonistic towards religion. And that's the other type of atheist, the materialistic atheist. But they end up, especially if they're honest, like some of them are like faking it, like they just don't want to follow any rules, so they kind of like pick atheism. But it's actually sometimes a sad case when someone's like sort of a true believer in atheism, because they'll end up not believing in free will, which is like, that actually could turn a person back to God, because that's like what God offers, and what he guarantees you is free will. And it's like, maybe you only get that free will when you're like in the game, in the sort of simulation, in the earth realm. Maybe there's no free will outside of that, but it's like, maybe it is materialistic at some point. I don't know. I'm confusing myself now, but there have been some materialistic people who've decided that free will is an illusion. They basically, they've taken their materialistic stance so far that every every action has a cause, that they no longer believe in free will. But like, that's crazy. How can you not believe in free will? I mean, you do believe in free will, but they'll believe like it feels like free will, but it's really how you were conditioned, what day you were born, what your, third grade teacher told you, and, this kind of stuff. But I think it's more like, if it walks like a duck, talks like a duck. I mean, if you think you have free will, and you have free will, and you better think you have free will, because you're a human and you need to, especially in this day and age of like social media trying to brainwash you, and AI trying to take credit for your work. I mean, you better have like some free will. The truth is in all caps. That's kind of funny. I used to go to this website. It was a video game website. This is like 25 years ago, and they used to do that, truth in all caps. I don't know if it was like a joke. I doubt it was based on this book. Let's see if we can get some chapter titles or something that'll, tell us something about this book. San Pedro, California. Oh, San Pedro, California? Well, maybe it's a coincidence, but isn't that also San Pedro's like St. Peter? St. Peter who operates the gates in heaven. All right, let's see a blurb. We got a blurb from William R. Pont of Anaheim, California. That's probably somebody, but I don't know who. William Guy Carr takes you to the beginning and reveals how financiers and their trade tools have fomented and will continue to foment national and international crises. What is going on in America didn't just happen. It was planned, nurtured, and carried out by those who will benefit from her demise. Wow, this really does sound like, this paragraph that we read here, and this paragraph. So we got the sort of paragraph pitching the book, and the blurb about the book, and we've got the bio on the back cover. So those are the three things we've read, and they really all sound like what you would get on Alex Jones. So even though this is a 7-year-old conspiracy, it seems like the template is there. Oh, he's got other books. Other books by the author, by Guess and by God, High and Dry, Brass Hats and Bell-Bottom Trousers, Hell's Angels of the Deep, Good Hunting, Out of the Mists, Checkmate in the North. Those are some interesting title names, aren't they? Good Hunting sounds like Good Will Hunting. I haven't seen that book yet, but I haven't seen that movie yet. That was like a Ben Affleck, what we were talking about before. That guy kept posting Ben Affleck. All right, we got another blurb. And this blurb, they talked about communists wanting to liquidate Christianity, but this quote is from a rabbi, Rabbi Emanuel Rabinovich, before a special meeting of the Emergency Council of European Rabbis in Budapest, Hungary, January 12, 1952. It's like Budapest all over again, isn't it? What we're living in these days. The death of a few thousand Jews in exchange for world leadership is indeed a small price to pay. What the fuck? This guy, why did he say this? I feel like I just read something anti-Semitic. I apologize. That was not intended. And now I feel really bad because I just joked that it's like Budapest all over again. I just was referencing the MCU. But the death of a few exchange for world leadership? So, is this book anti-Semitic? Oh my goodness, I've just been like blogging for like 30 minutes about an anti-Semitic book. Have I? Let's read what the chapter titles are. Because you would not get that impression from like the back cover and the front cover. It just sounded like a normal type of conspiracy. Yeah, I think that's what you always have to look at these conspiracies, even if the person tries to make it anti-Semitic or anti-Muslim or anti-Christian or anti-communist or whatever the person's against. I think you always have to look at it as not everyone from the group he's claiming is going to buy into the philosophy. And there's going to be plenty of people outside of that group that are going to buy into the philosophy. So, for example, let's say, I don't know why I'm picking Irish, but let's say the Irish people came up with a plan to conquer the world or something like that. What percentage of people are going to go along with that plan? I guess I should pick Germans because they did it in World War II, right? Like, let's say the Germans come up with a plan to take over the world. How many Germans signed up to be a part of that plan? And how many were like conscientious observers or whatever? Like, they basically didn't want to be a part of it. Let's just say that it's 50-50. I doubt that's the real number, but just for argument's sake, let's say out of every 100 people, 50 of them agree with the plan to take over the world. Well, if you'd introduce that plan in some other country, you probably get the same percentage. If it's 50-50 in Germany, then it's 50-50 in America, 50-50 in Ireland, 50-50 in Australia. It's like people are not different based on what country they were born in. Everyone is an individual. It's interesting because we were just talking about free will and nature versus nurture and materialistic. So on the first page, what did he say about some materialistic atheists? Was that the first blurb or was that? No, he said that. He called them atheistic materialistic. But if you're going to accuse Jewish people, then you better believe in atheistic materialistic, because that would be an argument for nurture over nature. Because if you're saying nurture, I mean, you'd still be an anti-Semite, but at least you'd be saying, oh, it's based on what someone told them when they were 3 and 4. But if you're saying that you don't believe in nurture and you believe in nature and you believe in free will, then you're saying that the percentage is different based on what? I mean, it's anti-Semitism. You just can't do that. You have to just say, like, whatever, you can pick whatever percentage you want. You think like 1% of the world are, selfish, or you think 95% of the world are selfish, or you think 50%, whatever percentage you think, fine, that's your opinion. But you have to apply it the same across all races, creeds, and colors, and cultures, and genders, and orientations, and like, nobody's better than anybody else, and nobody's worse than anybody else. It's like, whatever percentage of people are rotten, that's the percentage, no matter what sampling you pick. There's not going to be any place where the people are any better or worse. It's like, sadly, if you want to think about it that way, there's not like a place where people are better. And if it seems like that, those people probably just have experienced some good times, and life is easy there. Like where I live, it's actually, there's not really anything that difficult. It's like, I don't live in New Jersey, but I live on Staten Island, but you could think of it as New Jersey just because you probably heard of Jersey and not Staten Island. So in Jersey, you go to work in Manhattan. And in Manhattan, it costs like, I don't know what, like several $1,000s to rent like 280 square foot apartment. Whereas if you take that same money and go to Jersey, you can like own a house with a backyard. So life is pretty good in Jersey. And it's similar in Staten Island. So you're not even really dealing with the real world. So my point in saying all that is, if you live in a place where there's not enough money to go around and everyone's constantly robbing each other, then it's going to seem like there's more bad people. And if you live in a place that is, I don't want to say affluent, but like comfortable, like New Jersey, then there's going to be less people robbing each other because people are like, well, I don't need to rob anybody. All I got to do is work in Manhattan and I'll have enough money for groceries. But if you live in some town where you can't get together the money for groceries, then people are going to start doing bad things. But, this is why they say it's only God's place to judge, because when you're in that situation, I mean, what's good and what's bad? I mean, it's like, are the people in Jersey better or worse than the people living in that place where they don't have enough food or economy? They're not. They're just the same people. But everything is sort of skewed by whether they have the resources they need to survive or not. Which is not to make excuses. I know there's people who steal power tools and sell them, and I know that that's nothing like stealing bread to feed your family. I'm just saying there's a difference between, you can't judge. The difference between the actions is not representative of the difference between the heart. And I know that people say actions speak louder than words, but I'm just saying there's no people that's any better than another. In fact, if you look at it right now, it's probably the people who have the most money that have the least reason to do bad, steal, let's say. But, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that's not, maybe there's some other reason. Maybe if you have too much money, you get bored, and idle hands are the devil's playthings. Like, I don't really know the answer. That's why I say it's for God to judge. So I'm not even going to speculate. But I know that this quote should not be here. It's just wrong. It just sets the wrong tone. It like makes the book adversarial. It's like, I thought we wanted to move forward, not to well, I guess the book is from 70 years ago. Anyway, you should analyze situations based on the mechanics, not the players. I think they have expression like hate the game, not the player, or something like that. Like, basically, just study the mechanics and correct the mechanics, and don't worry about whether, 51% of these people are comfortable and only 49% of those people are comfortable. If you fix the mechanics, everyone's going to be comfortable. So I just would never analyze a situation, even a situation as complex as an economy, based on someone's background or any sort of segment, because everybody's the same. There's no group of people that are better or worse than anyone else. I mean, when you get down to the level of God's judgment, there's no one's better or worse. All right, let's see that. Wow, I shouldn't have opened this book. That was way more complex of a topic than I felt like dealing with in my first stream back. But anyway, let's read the chapter titles. World Revolutionary Movement. Okay, yeah, I've heard that before. English Revolution, 1640. So America was not founded yet, but people were there, which makes me wonder why the English would revolt if they could just move to America. All right, let's read the little paragraphs underneath the titles. That'll help us. All right, chapter 1. I assume this is supposed to say chapters, but it's like, I don't know, the print didn't come through, so I don't know how professional of a book this even is. All right, the World Revolutionary Movement, chapter 1, explains the difference between religions which teach belief in God and atheism, identifies those who have directed the World Revolutionary Movement, details the aims and objectives of internationalists and their totalitarian ideologies, weapons of total war discussed. Weapons of total war? Is that like information war? Definitely this book has a Alex Jones vibe. I'm going to see when I bought this. I wonder if I was working on this book or not. Like, I'm going to log into my Amazon account right now and just try to figure out, I'm doing it with my other hand. I'm just trying to figure out, when did I buy this book? Like, how many years ago? Does Amazon go back, like, forever? Like, if I search for the word pawns, am I going to find when I bought this book? All right, let's see. Magic moment. Search orders. April 2nd, 2013. That's interesting. So I bought this book 4 or 5 months before I started working on Electromagnet. So I started writing this in September of 2013. It might actually even been October. I think I was doing character designs in September. So I think I actually started writing the book in October 2013. So that's like 11 years ago. And I bought this book 11 and a half years ago, but I'm just opening it now. So I bought it 11 and a half years ago. I opened it tonight because I needed content for this stream. And it shows that I ordered 2 items. I wonder what the other item was. Oh, it was another book. And this one I ended up reading right away. And it was so bad. It was called Dark Moon, Apollo and the Whistleblowers. And I think I thought that book was going to be about like Apollo program, like picture anomalies and like quotes that don't add up. Like basically like you would see a YouTube video about Apollo missions today. I thought that's what was going to be in this 2013 book. But instead, it is so stupid. This book is like trying to convince you that there's like aliens on the moon and aliens in Mars and aliens in outer space. Basically, this book, Dark Moon, just thinks there's like aliens everywhere. I think I read like a third of it and then I put it down and I just thought, it says Mary Bennett on it, but I seem to recall there was a different author. I don't know why it says Mary Bennett. David Percy, Mary Bennett. Yeah, I don't know. I guess David Percy, Mary Bennett. I don't know why I was thinking that some other famous guy wrote it. Maybe they quote some other guy a lot in it. Anyway, it's horrible. So I'm going now to the Amazon page for that Dark Moon. And it's saying like, using secret documents and analyzing thousands of NASA photographs of Apollo 11 mission, the researchers delve in great deal into every aspect of this beguiling theory to answer questions that won't go away. Was Neil Armstrong really the first man on the moon? Was the second craft going to the moon at the same time as Apollo? Is the lethal radiation prevalent throughout deep space? What is wrong with the official account of the Apollo 13 accident? Was the live color feed from the moon not really live? Is it true that the lunar surface camera had no viewfinder? How was lighting used in the Apollo photographs if no lighting equipment was taken to the moon? The answers rock the foundation of trust in NASA's space program. So, reading that description, wouldn't you think that book was a conspiracy about, not a conspiracy, that book was about analyzing whether or not Apollo missions really landed on the moon? Like, isn't that what you would think from reading that description? And it's actually about, oh, there's aliens on the moon and NASA knows it. So it's like they can market themselves as like a NASA conspiracy book, but the conspiracy isn't that like NASA faked the moon landing. The conspiracy is that there's aliens on the moon. This is like a total catfish. So that book is called Dark Moon. The Amazon description for it is a total catfish. Now I'm wondering about the description for this book. Let me go and see that one. Because I'm thinking I got catfished on both of them, because there's no way. Like, when I bought this Dark Moon book, I definitely wanted to see someone, tear NASA's official story apart, and instead I got people saying NASA is hiding aliens on the moon. So I don't know what I thought I was buying when I bought Pawns in the Game, but I definitely was not intending to buy anti-Semitism. All right, let's see what it says. All right, Pawns in the Game from the Amazon page. The International Conspiracy Explained. This new revised edition is the best single work available on the evil conspiracy that has been responsible for devastating wars and continuing conflicts of the past century. They are now close to its ultimate goal of total world domination through a dictatorial one-world government. William Guy Carr, noted author who had a distinguished career as a Canadian naval officer, including outstanding service during World War II. All right. This book is definitely not. I'm not going to read the whole thing. There's like 2 more paragraphs. My voice is starting to go. So it's definitely not marketed as anti-Semitism. In fact, the picture of this book on the Amazon webpage has a spiral binding. Like, this has a square bound. It's like the paper's glued in there. It's not sewn like a library book would be, but it's like glued in there. But it's pretty good. Looks like good binding. But the picture on the website is a spiral bind, with those like plastic comb that goes through it. I indicated the wire spiral, but it's actually the plastic comb, that like, it's like got like, I don't know, 30 like prongs, and then they go through the paper and then they hook into the plastic comb binder. This is rated 4.7 on Amazon, which is a good rating, but 3.7 on Goodreads. So what I'm thinking is that it was a bad idea to put this quote here, but maybe it's just an example. Like, maybe they could have picked any person from any race, creed, or color, and they would have said the same idea that, a few of their, people is a small price to pay. Because don't forget, there was a time when people used to really be concerned with who they were. Like, there would be like a German neighborhood, an Italian neighborhood. Like, even people living in America would like stay in their own neighborhoods with their own like people of origin. So the fact that someone would say this, I think you can read it now, 70 years later, they would probably say, if they were part of this world communist movement, they would say like, well, it's a small price to pay if a few Americans are lost. So I don't think it means anything deeper than that. I think what it's saying is this person doesn't want to see people die, but it's like in the process they expect that will happen. So I don't think it's meant anything more than that. Not that I approve of that message, but I don't think it's meant anything more than that. All right, so it's already past an hour, so I'll just read the chapter headings, and then we'll call it a night. All right. I think we got to go to the close-up camera. The World Revolutionary Movement explains the difference between religions which which teach belief in God and atheism, identifies those who have directed the world revolutionary movement, details the aims and objectives of internationalists and their totalitarian ideologies, weapons of total war discussed. That's chapter 1. Chapter 2, the English Revolution, 1640 to 1660, explains briefly the activities of those who directed the world revolutionary movement from the time of Christ to 1640, when they decided to get rid of the King of England in order that they could obtain control of the country's wealth as the first step toward obtaining absolute control of the wealth, natural resources, and manpower of the entire world. Explains how moneylenders organized the Bank of England and established the national debt. Now, even though that's about England, that sort of sounded like JFK. But JFK was Irish, and if any people had a bone to pick with the English, it would probably be the Irish. So that may not be a coincidence that paragraph sounded like JFK. You know, maybe that's what they talk about up in Kennebunkport. I don't really know. The men who caused the French Revolution explains how the same conspirators who plotted the English Revolution elected their successors who plotted the French Revolution. The long-range plans of the world revolutionary movement exposed how usury, vice, corruption, and graft are used to blackmail and bribe the influential people into doing the will of the conspirators. How they use terrorism and the mob, explained, proves that communism is the manual of action used by the international conspirators. Tells how they liquidate tools as soon as they have served their purpose. Grand Orient Masonry and its connection with the world revolutionary movement explained. Well, until they got to that Grand Orient Masonry, this was sounding like that book, like Tales of an, what did he call himself? Tales of a economic hitman or something like that. That paragraph definitely was sounding like that. Tales of the Economic Hitman. Yeah, I think, you know, people talk about corporate intelligence, and that's supposed to be like light spying, but, you know, there's billions of dollars at stake. I mean, people die when there's billions of dollars at stake. And when you're talking about a country, you might be talking about trillions of dollars. Yeah, I mean, I think it goes beyond spying. I don't know exactly what's going on. I'm not in the, you know, the realm of international diplomacy, but I think some bad things happen because there's just a lot of money at stake. All right, chapter 4, the downfall of Napoleon, explains how the internationalists overthrow the power of Napoleon and set up their agents as the secret power behind the thrones of Europe in order to ultimately destroy them. Explains how the Rothschilds made millions out of promoting wars and revolutions. Tells how the international capitalists financed Lenin and Trotsky to usurp power in Russia in order that they could try out their theories for a one-world government. You know, I remember, like, I don't know, 15 years ago, 10, 15 years ago, probably about when I bought this book, even though I hadn't read these chapter headings. I just opened the package today. But I remember I was discussing with my wife, and you know how people always say they, and it's like, who is they? Like, who is the person who's like pulling the strings? And of course I don't know, but my answer was, and I didn't say that for sure this was the answer, but I was like, who gave Napoleon that island to retire to? I mean, not only did they let him like retire to an island, but then he like summoned the forces together and like made another attack. And they still let him go back to the island and live out his days. It just told me that Napoleon was not a singular force who was defeated at Waterloo. Napoleon was representative of, you know, people who have the ability to give you an island and an island full of inhabitants to let you retire in peace after you've played your part. What's that song by Coldplay? They sang it at the Super Bowl halftime a few years ago. And they had the pocket on the guy's jacket looked like the email, the Google Gmail logo, which I believe is also some sort of grand Masonic. Oh, that was in the previous Downfall of Napoleon. Did we read that? I think we did. Anyway, in the previous one, they talked about Grand Orient Masonry. And I think that guy who did that Used to Rule the World song, when he's singing it in the music video, he has like that Google Gmail logo, which I think is also sort of the Masonry logo. And the song, I Used to Rule the World, I don't know, it sounds a lot like Napoleon's story to me. And if the guy singing it has the Google Gmail on his coat, well, then it sounds like he thinks the Masons are the ones who gave Napoleon that island. I don't know if that time frame really fits. I don't really understand the Masons. I think 150 years ago in United States, being a Mason was like being a member of like, I don't know, one of those like, you go to like a hotel chain and they tell you get free Wi-Fi if you like join the benefits club. I think that's kind of what it was in the U.S. It was like you could travel to any city and you could go to the Mason Lodge and they would give you like a cot and a bowl of soup. I think that's all it was. And nowadays it's just bullshit. They just like take people's money and give them like some certificates or something. But 500 years ago, I don't know. Maybe the Masons were some sort of force in the world. I really don't know. I have no idea. So maybe I'll read this book and have a vague idea afterward. Chapter 5, The American Revolution, tells how the American Revolution was plotted and planned by the same international group which plotted the English and French revolutions, and how the international financiers obtained control of the American economy. Yeah, that definitely happened. Chapter 6, Monetary Manipulation, explains how the conspirators created depressions and financial panics to enrich themselves, in accordance with the plans exposed in Chapter 3, and how the British, American, French, and German bankers were brought under control of the international group, the Federal Reserve conspiracy exposed. Yeah, this is like, have you ever heard someone talk about the reverse Kramer fund, where it's like, there's this guy, Jim Cramer, and he like tells you what stocks to pick, so people do the opposite of what he says, and they make money doing it? I mean, nobody's going to give you... The people who own the papers and tell the papers what to say, they're like billion/trillionaires. And when they move money, they need to have a lot of people doing the opposite of what they do in order for them to do what they want to do, because it's going to take billions of dollars. So you have the paper tell people, oh, it's a good time to buy whatever stock they're trying to sell, or it's a good time to sell whatever stock they're trying to buy. So if you want to ride the coattails of the trillionaires, you do the opposite of whatever the newspaper says to do. Really, though, I wouldn't even mess with stocks at all, because, I don't know. Like, I remember once my son asked at the table where me and my dad were both there, and he was like, what's an IPO? And before my dad could answer, I was like, oh, that's when they sell the stock to all the suckers. Because the people who got in at the ground floor, those like first 500 investors, they really own the company. And when they sell it to the stock market, yes, in a technical sense, the people buying at the IPO is who they're selling the company to. But they're selling it for like $30 a share times X million number of shares. Whereas the initial investors, they got in at, I don't know, whatever the company needed at that time, whatever they were desperate enough to give you the share of the company for. Maybe they just needed like a few million to buy, to build a plant or a server farm or something. I mean, it's like basically to a big time investor, like what's $10 million? It's like nothing, but that 10 million at IPO could be a lot more than 10 million. It could be like $500 million or something like that. So I jokingly said the IPO is when they sell the stock to the suckers. They're not really suckers. I mean, they're just operating with what they have, which is, $30 times however many, Whereas the people who got in at the ground floor, they give you cash money exactly when you need it. And if that company succeeds, they're going to be hugely successful. And if it doesn't, well, they're going to call up 251 or 250 of the other original investors, and they're going to liquidate the company and get back as much of their 10 million as they can. Theoretically, I'm not saying that's a fact. All right, Chapter 7, Events Preceding the Russian Revolution, Lenin. The inside story of political intrigue which brought about World War I, so the Russian Revolution could be accomplished and made to serve the purpose of the internationalists. Lenin's connection with the plot fully explained. So it makes it sound like, this like pawns in the game, what the title says. It makes it sound like Lenin's not leading some bloody revolution inspiring communism in people so much as he is following the orders of his money masters. That's how it makes it sound, and I'm not saying that. Although I remember picking up from the bargain bin at Barnes & Noble 20 years ago or so this book, and it was called something like How Wall Street Created a Nation, and it was like how the country of Panama was created because some people were trying to create the Panama Canal, and the easiest way to do it was like to create the country. And I just had some random chit-chat with, I think it was like a vendor that I was working with at the time, and it came up that I was reading that book. And the person like, oh, yeah, no, I never heard that. That's weird. Like, he basically made me feel like I was repeating a conspiracy theory and should be ashamed, when really I was quoting a book that I picked up at the clearance bin at Barnes & Noble. I don't know, is Barnes & Noble like purveyors of conspiracy theories? Maybe they were back then. Maybe that's why the selection is so bad now. All you can get is like Stephen King and Harry Potter. It's like you can't even get any independent authors these days. Online you can, but not in the store. Not if you go. If you go in the store, it's all Marvel, Star Wars, Stephen King, Harry Potter, maybe some Squashmallows, some like Starbucks coffee. You're not really going to get a book that's going to tell you something that you haven't heard before, which is what that Panama book told me. I have no idea if it's true, but I just read it. Sounded about right. It looked like it was accurate. They gave names. They gave documents. It sounded like, yeah, a bunch of Wall Street people created Panama. You don't have to believe that. I'm just telling you that's what a book said. Chapter 9, Political Intrigue, 1914 and 1919. International intrigue exposed. The truth told about how the men who have constituted themselves the secret power behind the governments operate. Political blackmail, murder, and illegal detention exposed. The Glass Club in London exposed as a den of iniquity and the center of espionage. What is that word? Asquith was forced to resign in 1915 so that Lord Lloyd George and Winston Churchill could carry out the mandate of, what does that say? The mandate of international conspirators. All right, I think I'm going to start going through these quicker because I need to wrap up. The Treaty of Versailles. What is that all about? Treaty of Versailles tells how the treaty was, I don't know, this camera's not working. Let's go back to this one. Now it's blurry as shit. All right. The Treaty of Versailles tells how this treaty was dictated by agents of internationals so that the terms would place them in position to bring about World War II when it suited their purpose. Wow, this guy who wrote this book thinks the world wars were just people pulling strings. Do you think that's true? I don't know. None of the world wars happened in my lifetime. I guess hopefully there's not another one, but yeah, I mean, there's some wars going on now. Do they look like they were just string pulled, or do they look like they happened? I don't know. They look like they happened to me, but maybe we're going to read a book in 100 years that says strings were pulled, or 50 years. Chapter 11, Stalin, explains how Stalin was first the tool of Western internationalists and then developed imperialistic ambitions which seriously affected their long-range plans, the intrigue exposed by which the international bankers tried to placate Stalin, how they fomented World War II and then removed Chamberlain to make way for Churchill so he could start the hot or shooting war in 1940, how Roosevelt acted under instructions of the Illuminati and gave Stalin everything he asked for to try and bring him back into line, the secrets of Yalta and other meetings exposed. Yeah, I would put money that Alex Jones has read this book before he started his career. Or early in his career, at least. Chapter 12, The Spanish Revolution, explains step by step how a revolution is prepared, tells how labor is used to serve the secret plans of capitalists, explains the difference between Stalinism and Trotskyism, tells how kings are overthrown and elections fixed by agents of the internationalists. Hold on a second while I drink some water. By the way, the Amazon website is showing that the Jets play the Texans in 41 hours. I guess that's Thursday night. Maybe I'll check that out. Are the Texans doing good this year? I know the Jets are doing terrible. But they had high hopes before the season started, but it hasn't worked out. All right. The Civil War in Spain. The events which led to the outbreak of the Civil War are told. It is explained how the youth of a nation is subverted, how the criminal class is exploited by the agents of the internationalists, how deceits and lies are used to bewilder the public and prepare them for a civil war. The technique of divide and conquer explained. Well, that seems valid, divide and conquer. Chapter 14, Franco. The truth about Franco told. The revolutionary underground revealed. Tells how military leaders are bribed into taking part in conspiracy or murdered in cold blood. The detailed plans for a revolutionary effort exposed. How revolutionary agents are placed in municipal governments revealed. Well, that seems out of date. So they were still like bribing and murdering people 70 years ago. Nowadays, I think they entrap and blackmail them. That seems to be what I'm reading in the papers. I don't know that to be true, but that seems to be what people say. Chapter 15, The Revolutionary Reign of Terror. The preconceived plan revealed by which the directors of the revolution remove all they consider their enemies, tells how torture, mutilation, mental anguish, publicly performed rapes, and degradation are used systematically to subjugate the population quickly, exposes how lunatics and the most hardened and depraved criminals are used to carry out the diabolical plan and then liquidated after they have completed their horrible task. Yeah, I remember reading this book by Chris Widener, 15 years ago, and he said in it that he doesn't watch the news or read the news because he finds it too depressing. And I think that could be a bit of a cover. I think he might really know that some of this news is not just depressing, it's meant to be trauma-inducing. I mean, it's almost like reading The Terror is like... sorry, I stepped on the punchline. Reading the newspaper is like terror for your imagination. It's like you terrorize yourself when you read the newspaper. So I'm not telling you not to read the newspaper, but I don't know, maybe don't let it get to you. Chapter 16, Events Leading Up to World War II, the international intrigue used to bring Britain into war with Germany exposed. The reason the internationalists wanted the war explained. What happened to patriotic men and women who tried to prevent the war is told. Chapter 17, World War II breaks out. Hidden history revealed, how the internationalists planned to use the United Nations to bring their long-range plans to maturity explained. The inside story of post-war intrigue told. The dangers which may cause World War III explained. Chapter 18, The Present Dangers. Suggested remedies and solutions submitted with a request for immediate action along constitutional lines to curb the power of forces of evil. I mean, it looks like an ambitious book, doesn't it? 70 years ago by a Canadian. I don't know. International Conspiracy Introduction. That's on the back on the dollar bill, isn't it? E pluribus unum or whatever. Novus Ordo Secularum, New World Order. What does that say? Annuit Septus? I don't know. I'm pretty sure it's on the back of the dollar bill. Insignia of the Order of the Illuminati, which is the reverse of the U.S. seal and appeals on the $1 bill. Wow, this is like... Basically, if you read this book, you don't have to listen to Alex Jones. Well, he'll give you the updated... You know, this book's 70 years old. It's not that long, this book. 209 pages. That's counting the index. 203. What readers said. Is this even past the end of the book? This is a postscript, chapter 18, The Present Dangers. Well, let's just call it about 200 pages. I mean, I think it's interesting. I would call it opinion. I think it's like... I don't think you can call these facts. It's like I don't want to accept the mainstream's like whitewashed version of everything, but I don't want to also go into the paranoia. You know, it's kind of like the whitewashed version is like everything's under control, and the paranoid version is like Satan's winning this chess game. You know, I think the truth is like somewhere in the middle. And I think you can largely take issues, you know, individually and trust on your fellow man to also, you know, do them good. Like, basically, you try to, if someone puts you in charge of, like, waste management, you try to manage the waste to the best of your ability. If someone puts you in charge of, you know, parking cars, you try to park cars to the best of your ability. It's like, whatever job you're doing, you try to do your job correctly. If anyone's corrupt, they got to go. Doesn't matter if they're like, you know, a corrupt waiter or a corrupt president. Like, any corruption and everything's not going to work because now there's bad information traveling around. There's bad precedents being set. There's connections that look like have causality when they don't. You know, it's almost like you got to go right back to the 10 Commandments. Just like, don't lie, don't cheat, don't steal, you know, respect God, respect what he built, respect the calendar. Yeah, I think if everyone does their job authentically and morally and ethically, and I think that everything should just work out. It's like no one can really study the whole landscape at once, which is what this book seems to be trying to do. I mean, it's a little bit too easy sometimes. It's almost like fiction bolstered by confirmation bias. Facts from fiction bolstered by cherry-picked facts that confirm the bias. This book is too ambitious, is what I'm trying to say. He's trying to cover too much. Just maybe I'm wrong. Maybe if I read all his other books first, maybe this is a proper, sort of compilation of everything that he's explained previously. But from what we just read in those chapter headings, it looks like too much. It looks like he's pretending he understands stuff that he doesn't. He's oversimplifying things. He's guessing and then trying to back up his guesses. I mean, we know there's problems, but we can attack those problems. We don't need to come up with some theory about some world revolutionary movement, though maybe it's not a theory. That's the other thing. What if he's right? Like, for example, who's funding George Soros? Because I'm not believing that he's making all his money off being a smart trader. I don't think that's accurate. All right. It's already over an hour and a half, so I'm going to wrap up. Anyway, I'm John Rapp. This is Just Rest Your Eyes. Good night, and see you tomorrow.